What's up, everybody? Going to be looking at a few things today. Going to be starting with this is a reaction video. Going to be starting with some of the inauguration video with the executive orders. Oh, I got something playing in the background. Going to be starting with starting with the inauguration. Just some of it. I'm not playing all of it. Then we'll go into a tiny bit of the Ironclad original, and then we'll get into the actual video I want to show and do a reaction on. And so let's get into it. The main thing that I want to talk about and focus on is Trump designating the cartels as terrorist organizations, which he said he's doing today and signed an executive order on.
A series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever. Record inflation. Today I will national energy emergency have the largest amount of oil and gas that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal that nobody could have dreamt of. Trade system to protect our citizens. Revenue service to collect all tariffs, duties. My administration, years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression. I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech, equal and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law.
If you want to see the full video, go check that out. I already watched it, so I just want him to show the part about the cartels real quick. That's all I'm looking for, really.
This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. Male and female. Back pay. Being subjected to radical political theories and his enemies. Success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back. Most powerful, most respectfully, where it should be given to the country of Panama after.
Anyway, I can't find it. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. If you want to, he does say that he's signing an executive order to designate the cartels as terrorists. So we're going to war with the cartels. So just, yeah, if you want to go check that video out, if you want to hear that. I can't find that part. It's a long video. And then go check this Ironclad original, or Ironclad. He's got some good, interesting videos.
Whatever happens starting January 20th, I'm very curious to see what this mass deportation is going to look like and how they approach it. Like I said, I support deporting illegal immigrants who have criminal background. Illegal immigrants who have criminal backgrounds. Let's say it again. Illegal immigrants who have criminal backgrounds. I don't like the idea of just kicking down a frickin', I said it before, a Panda Express and saying, who's working back here, show me your papers. Like, I don't agree with that, right? That feels like, God, this dude, these are, they call them domicile migrants, right? Domicile immigrants that are working, they're doing, they're living a life, but like, I do not like the sound of that, and people are gonna hate hearing that, but I don't like the sound of that.
The opinions of the guests and host are their own and do not represent the opinions of Ironclad, the Border Patrol, or the Department of Homeland Security.
We cut through the partisan talking points. We're not interested in perpetuating fear. We're interested in seeking truth, hearing what's really going on America's borderland.
Jeez, I got a little bit of a glitch going on.
Welcome to Borderland, an Ironclad original. This episode, I'm doing it with my producer, Bruna, who has been deep in
Moving on, this is what I wanted to show you right here. And watch with you and do a reaction on.
America is losing the war on drugs. The opioid crisis threatens the very fabric of US society. In the past 25 years, an estimated 800,000 lives have been lost, and millions of others ripped apart by a cycle of addiction, poverty, crime, and premature death. In an article with UK newspaper The Guardian from January 2024,
And it says in this video that Biden was going to do something about the border. He maybe done a little bit, but not enough. So just ignore that part. This time around, this is a video 9 months ago, so it's a little out of date, but it's one of the most interesting videos I could find. Maybe they'll do another one, hopefully. But yeah, just so you're aware, it's a little older, and it's about Biden, more of Biden, and what he was gonna do, but he didn't do shit.
or Dr. Art Van Zee said it didn't have to happen. There were so many missed opportunities, so many times it could have been stopped. Now, I don't see how it ends. If the country doesn't take decisive action, many of the communities worst affected might never conceivably recover. In an unprecedented move, President Joe Biden has called an emergency meeting with his Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin III and the heads of each branch of the military. Biden, like so many of his predecessors, knows exactly where these drugs are coming from and exactly who to target: Mexico and its infamous drug cartels. He knows he's reached the point of no retreat, and that it's his responsibility to tackle the problem head on, and that starts today. But why has the Biden administration decided to act now? Two reasons: fentanyl and China. In an interview back in May 2023, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland called the Mexico-based Sinaloa cartel the largest, most violent, and most prolific fentanyl trafficking operation in the world. The drug itself, a synthetic opioid, is up to 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. A truly chilling indication of exactly how deadly this drug can be. Various governmental agencies, including the Drug Enforcement Administration, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the military, have all tracked the cartel's supply chains and money laundering networks back to China. Even more troublingly, they've identified exactly where the ingredients to make one of the most addictive opioids on the planet have come from: the same country, China. However, an all-out assault on the Mexican drug cartels will be a tricky proposition to sell to both Congress and the American people. The economic ramifications alone could be disastrous. But when the president heard that fentanyl was being smuggled into the country disguised as candy, and that it could quite easily be mistaken as such by young children, he knew the time for talking had stopped. Hour 1. The meeting commences. The battle lines are drawn. Biden is in a prickly, confrontational mood. He paces up and down the Oval Office and informs Austin, General Charles Q. Brown Jr., Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Christopher W. Grady, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Randy A. George, Chief of Staff of the Army, General Christopher J. Mahoney, Acting Commandant of the Marine Corps, and Admiral Lisa M. Franchetti, Chief of Naval Operations, of his plan of action. Folks, with your help, we're going to wreck the Mexican drug cartels once and for all. We're going to launch an attack so devastating and precise that we will shatter their operations completely. George is the first to express his surprise. Like the other top military officials in attendance, he presumed this was no more than a standard briefing. What do you mean exactly, Mr. President? Just what I said. We're going to strike at the drug cartels in their own backyards, and we're going to put them out of commission within the next 24 hours. The room becomes a hive of activity, argument, counter-argument, and hypotheses. But Biden has already put Port Huachuca, the nearest U.S. military base to the Mexican border, on high alert. Situated in Cochise County, Arizona, the complex has a population of about 6,500 active-duty soldiers. Only in recent weeks, that number has swelled exponentially, and the site has been the scene of top-secret military operations. Additional troops and military hardware have been covertly delivered to the base in preparation for a surprise attack on the drug cartels. Over the next 45 minutes, Biden and his team draw up a two-pronged attack. Firstly, the 4 biggest cartels will be targeted by systematic drone strikes. Not that this will be a wholly straightforward part of the mission. The drug-making and distribution facilities identified by U.S. intelligence are situated in different parts of the country, in some cases hundreds of kilometers apart. The Sinaloa cartel in the northwest, the Jalisco cartel, mainly in the Tierra Caliente region, the Gulf cartel in the northeast, centered around the border state of Tamaulipas, and the Los Zetas cartel, also in the same northeasterly region. But sir, says Randy, our drones don't have that kind of range to hit targets that far away from Huachuca. As a result, we'll never be able to coordinate the kind of synchronized attacks you talked about. That's when Biden reveals his ace card: the Mexican government. Since 2006, the country declared its own war on the cartels. 360,000 citizens have been victims of drug-related homicide. Despite partnering closely with the US, receiving billions of dollars to modernize its security forces, reform its judicial system, and fund development projects to curb migration, no real or lasting progress has been made. Ultimately, Washington hoped to stem the flow of illegal drugs into the country by bolstering security and monitoring operations along the border, but to no avail. Like his American
Updating this field is so confusing. This CRM sucks. Is it me? Am I asking for too much?
counterpart, Mexican leader Andrés Manuel López Obrador, or AMLO as he's called in the popular press, knows that the time for empty rhetoric and procrastination is well and truly over. It's time to act. In maneuvers just as covert, Mexican military hardware and troops have been gathering in the northwest and northeast of the country. Unbeknown to the drug cartels, they are now under round-the-clock surveillance and are about to be subject to a devastating attack, the likes of which have rarely, if ever, been seen before. Secondly, and decisively, ground troops then swarm on each of the targeted cartel facilities to ensure that they have all been put out of operational use and that the key figures in the Mexican drug trade have either been killed or captured. We've done this before, the president says. Think bin Laden in Pakistan, and don't kid yourselves in any way, shape, or form. This operation is of similar importance to the American people. But sir, says Brown, much of the cartel infrastructure is based in cities or towns, built-up areas with a high concentration of civilians. Military action of this nature would result in a potentially huge loss of life, collateral damage that will be hard to justify, no matter how worthy the cause. Risky it might be, but Biden knows he has to bring down the Mexican drug cartels as quickly as he plans. Ultimately, it would give him the kind of political leverage that might just see him cling onto the keys of the White House in the upcoming elections. Make no mistake, Biden is staking his political legacy on the success of this operation. Let's proceed as planned. Let's do some good, people. Hour 2. Fort Huachuca has been put on a state of high alert. Personnel are now priming the Hellfire missiles on squadrons of drones, which will shortly be launched against the drug facilities within range. Each drone will be armed with the AGM-114 Hellfire air-to-surface missile, ASM. Originally designed for anti-armor use, they were later developed for precision drone strikes against other target types, especially high-value targets, just like the drug manufacturing facilities in Mexico. This multi-mission, multi-target precision strike ability means that the missiles can be launched from multiple air, sea, and ground platforms, making Fort Huachuca the perfect location to initiate the surprise attack. To ensure optimal devastation, the drones will be launched in mini-squadrons of 20 in number. When in range, the laser-guided AGM-114L Longbow Hellfire missiles will be deployed. Nothing within the vicinity is likely to survive a direct hit. Hour 6. The first wave of drones is launched. In a series of well-coordinated attacks, the Hellfire missiles successfully target the drug cartel infrastructure, decimating dozens of buildings and reducing whole streets to nothing more than dust and rubble. Reports from Mexican troops on the ground paint a picture of utmost carnage and chaos. Whole neighborhoods have been leveled. Dead bodies are strewn across the blood-soaked streets. Fires rage, sirens wail. Not that there is much that the paramedics who arrive at the scene can do for those maimed and seriously injured. Reports of thousands of casualties from each town and city are starting to reach media outlets across Mexico and beyond. The attacks are devastating and effective. One cartel after another has been effectively wiped off the face of the earth. But at what cost? Like Brown had predicted back at the Oval Office, the cartels are
I just want to see how people make these maps. I'll do that later. Back to it. I think these maps are really cool to freaking make. I want to make one.
far from stupid. They deliberately operate out of big cities and towns he mentioned in heavily built-up areas to nullify the possibility of such an attack. They know that no government could initiate a full-blown offensive if the loss of innocent lives would be so high. Biden has called their bluff. The sudden nature and ferociousness of the attacks have taken the cartels by surprise. For that reason, they have suffered irrecoverable losses, both in terms of manpower, infrastructure, and product. While the drug manufacturing facilities may have been primitive, they were incredibly effective, with some working around the clock. Billions of dollars of refined opioids destined for the American market have been destroyed. Great chemical clouds of smoke hang over the site of each decimated building. Visibility is negligible, and the air is barely breathable. Round 1 to Biden and the Mexican government.
Introducing Outplayed. Record anything on your PC. Highlight reels, let's play sessions.
Hour 12. Heavy artillery moves in on the ground. Mexican AMX-13, T-55 and T-72 tanks and hundreds of troops, ably supported by US Rangers, Green Berets, Marine or Delta Force regiments, aim to secure each targeted area and ensure that any hostile threat has been neutralized. At first, this appeared to be no more than a reconnaissance mission, with troops confirming that different sectors of different towns and cities were safe and reporting back to their superiors, but that didn't prove to be the case. As each unit picked its way through the rubble, they met with incredible and unforeseen resistance. Although fully unprepared for the attack, the surviving cartel members have somehow managed to galvanize themselves into a scattered fighting force. Equipped with armored trucks with 50 caliber machine guns and their own grenade-dropping drones, the severely depleted forces scramble to launch wave after wave of attack. As a result, the Mexican and US troops have to dig in and take defensive positions. With far superior manpower and resources, they see this as the only momentary setback and fully expect to continue their advance in due course. However, as US snipers get into position and begin to return fire, they soon realize that they are shooting at no more than heavily armed children. "Sir," one of the commanding officers reports back to base, "we have a slight problem on the ground here and need some clarification from our superiors before proceeding with the mission." For the drug cartels, no tactic, however preposterous or underhand, is off the table. They have routinely used child soldiers as young as 11 to further their operational goals. Whether patrolling the drug-making facilities or intimidating the local populace, kids who should rightly have been playing in parks are now toting semi-automatic weapons and tossing grenades at one of the most advanced armies in the world. The killing of children, even in a war against drugs, wouldn't look good for Biden in an election year. When the president is made aware of the fact in the White House Situation Room, he sits in studied silence for a full minute, maybe more. He no doubt visualizes the headlines in the morning papers and hears the bulletins on all the major news channels, but he's gone too far to pull out now. Ever since he took office, he's read one report after another enumerating the drug-related deaths directly attributable to the Mexican cartels. He knows it's a cliché, and he knows that it may well not save his job, but in some situations, tough decisions simply have to be made. In some situations, as inhumane as it may sound, the ends really do justify the means. "Continue with the mission," he informs his staff. "Let's get this thing done and dusted, today." Hour 18. Having slowly but surely overcome the fierce resistance on the ground, Mexican and US troops have now secured each and every sector of each and every targeted area. Of the few local people who survived the first drone onslaught, then the ground assault, they stagger from the remnants of the decimated buildings, bloodied and beaten, and either waving improvised white flags or raising their hands in surrender. As the medical teams rush over to assist them, one word in Spanish resonates above all others: gracias. As much as the troops are moved by this simple gesture, as much as they realize that they've contributed to removing these people from out under the tyranny of the drug cartels, it's a bittersweet victory. So many victims, many of them children, are testament to the true cost of the operation. Hour 24. Biden calls a press conference at the White House. In the James S. Brady press briefing room, the president informs an unexpected world of the news that the US, in cooperation with the Mexican government, launched a bold and decisive attack at the very heart of the Mexican drug cartels. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. We finally got him. The press contingent looks on in confusion. None have been briefed regarding the true nature and scale of the operation. Shortly after I came into office, Biden continues, I read a report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Do you know how many deaths were directly linked to the illegal opioids that have flooded into our country from Mexico? Well, let me tell you, 100,306. No more. We've just taken a huge step in finally winning the war on drugs. Biden is seen as a hero and his actions lauded across the globe. Of course, this scenario is just one of many ways the US military could potentially wreck the Mexican drug cartels. In reality, however, the American government would face many legal problems in launching any such attack, not to mention fierce opposition in Congress. Firstly, they would have to redefine the status of the drug cartels through the US courts, but this could conceivably be overcome in quite a straightforward manner. By designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs, Biden would be legally entitled to deploy military force to overcome the drug problems posed by Mexico. This may not be the most popular or welcome of moves, though. If the drug cartels were designated as FTOs, it would have a potentially crippling effect on the Mexican economy. Some experts estimate that it could hit the tourist sector to the tune of $20 billion, or 8.5% of its GDP. Why? Quite simply, people would be scared of traveling to a country riddled with terroristic elements. Other economic arguments are just as compelling. Trade between the US and Mexico alone is worth $72.1 billion. Eye-watering figures that illustrate exactly how much is at stake here. But at what point does the social cost of the opioid crisis in the US outweigh the economic ramifications of war on the Mexican drug cartels? We've already provided some chilling statistics at the top of the video, but perhaps it pays to dig deeper to paint an even starker picture of the crisis. As mentioned earlier in the video, both countries are well aware of the scale of the issue and the human cost involved in the opioid crisis, even if, historically, the US has been reluctant to intervene militarily to not worsen its already shaky relationship with Mexico, inherent issues which can be traced back to the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 48. With the other conflicts that are raging around the world at present, most notably Russia's brutal attempts to annex Ukraine, López Obrador may fear a similar fate. But any notion of the US carving up the country and taking over is, of course, mere conjecture. What can't be denied are the many legal rumblings that have taken place in recent years. Following the death of US nationals in Mexico, Senator Lindsey Graham, co-sponsored by Senators John Kennedy, Marsha Blackburn, Josh Hawley, Steve Daines, Mike Lee, and Mike Brown, introduced the Ending the Narcos Act of 2023 to the United States Senate, or to give it its full name, Ending the Notorious, Aggressive, and Remorseless Criminal Organizations and Syndicates Act. Following on from a previous point, the purpose of this act was to designate Mexican cartels and other transnational criminal organizations as FTOs. The reasoning behind this is that these organizations pose significant threats to US citizens due to their involvement in acts of terrorism, including the production and importation of illicit substances such as fentanyl. Again, the ultimate aim was to enable the US to tackle this threat with the kind of extreme military force described earlier in the video. And it would be remiss not to mention the migrant crisis. Everyone remembers Donald Trump's infamous Build a Wall speech from his successful presidential campaign back in 2016. In a BBC report from 2022, there were a record 239,416 encounters between illegal migrants and US law enforcement at the Mexico border. And while Biden has attempted to address the issue by offering legal status to an estimated 11 million undocumented people in the US, his proposal failed to gain enough bipartisan support to pass into law. Conservative critics have been outraged by what they see as being soft on the border. And the figures back this up, with a significant spike in number during Biden's term in office, something which could prove critical if, as expected, he faces off against Trump again in the upcoming election. And if all that wasn't bad enough, there's an even more sinister geopolitical subplot to our story: China. As highlighted earlier, Beijing is known to be supplying the ingredients that make up fentanyl to the Mexican drug cartels. The natural question is why? What does China get out of aiding and abetting criminal organizations? Instability, thousands of deaths each year, a general weakening of the social structure across vast swathes of America. The list could go on. But there is historical precedence, if not a justification for China's stance here. The country sees fentanyl as revenge for what it calls the century of humiliation and the opium wars of the 1830s and 40s. These kinds of tactics, therefore, can be seen as a historically based foreign policy to ensure that China remains strong and its enemies weak. Case in point, China had suspended cooperation with the United States on drug policies in 2023, but agreed to resume bilateral cooperation in January 2024. Undoubtedly, there's a much bigger picture here to consider, one that would take up one, if not several more videos to cover in its entirety. But if there is one underlying factor that's stopping the US from deploying military force against the Mexican drug cartels, it's the dreaded possibility of mission creep. In so many conflicts of recent years, and we can go back to Vietnam and beyond, the US has deployed forces in a region for what it initially saw as a short-term basis to achieve its military aims, be that to stabilize a country or gain a geopolitical foothold in a region crucial to US interests abroad. All too often, this has led to years of attritional fighting, and in the case of Vietnam and Afghanistan, embarrassing and costly withdrawals, with the country in question being in a much worse situation than it was before. The last thing Biden or whoever happens to occupy the White House in the future wants is a long, drawn-out, painful, bloody war in Mexico. For that reason alone, any military action against the drug cartels is highly unlikely now or in the short to medium term. Just quite how the US solves the opioid crisis and gains an upper hand in the war on drugs remains to be seen. But perhaps the words of former Guatemalan leader Otto Perez Molina, a paraphrase from a famous Albert Einstein quote, sums up the situation most succinctly. We cannot continue doing the same thing and expect different results. Now we're coming to the end of the video, and it's time to ask you what you think about the opioid crisis in America and how the government should respond. Do you think the problem is so serious that some kind of military intervention is inevitable? Or do you think the economic factors highlighted in this video make military action all but impossible? And what of the bigger geopolitical picture? Can the US sit back as China floods its towns and cities with highly addictive substances like fentanyl? It's certainly a tough call for whoever will be sitting in the White House come November, but sadly, it's not a problem that's going to go away on its own. If America doesn't act now, it may well be counting the cost for generations to come. Tell us what you think in the comments, and thank you for watching the video.
When it comes to video creation, every detail matters.
Yeah, so very interesting. I think we should use military force. That's just my own personal opinion. It's been far overdue. Yeah, very interesting stuff. Prepare. It's the best thing we can do. But yeah, just wanted to show everybody that. Go check it out. Very interesting stuff. Alright, see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. See ya.